Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 210 from the Vault, episode 143, Building Trust Through Emotional Honesty and Assertiveness. Well, welcome back to this month, which will be featuring some of your favorite episodes of the show, namely around healthy communication and self-confidence. In this next episode from the Vault, we look at a big part of assertiveness, and that is emotional honesty. In other words, saying what you really think, what you really feel, and what you really need. What you're willing to do and not willing to do. Owning it. Owning your truth, every bit of it. Owning your truth, all of it, and every last bit of it. Because when you do, you will instill more trust and safety in the relationship. And build more trust in yourself. In this episode, we look at what it means to begin getting emotionally honest, being brave by being assertive, and why it helps to create trust and allows for more meaningful connection in our relationships. We compare and contrast healthy connecting versus unhealthy ways like passive-aggressive and avoidant ways to talk to someone. All right, so let's get to it. Here's episode 143. Hey, it's Mary Baker, and welcome to episode 143, Healthier Communication, Building Trust with Emotional Honesty. So welcome back to our theme this month, all about healthy communication and why it's so crucial to have in our relationships if we want healthy ones. Remember last week we talked about how important detachment and empathy are for connection and how boundaries keep it safe. Well, today I want to add another very important element that we have touched on before, and that is emotional honesty. Now, why does this matter so much? Well, remember last week how we said we need boundaries in our communication for it to feel safe? Well, one of those boundaries should be that we agree to show up honestly without passive-aggressive behavior, which means owning our truth, stating our truth, and that they will try to do the same. So there's trust. Remember also how we said that only emotionally honest and vulnerable communication is real, because we need honest and real to have trust and to feel safe and to want to open up. Last week we talked about how we need to know we won't be questioned, judged, criticized, shamed, manipulated, or emotionally abandoned in the moment. So there are ground rules, and I think emotional dishonesty occurs because we are telling a lie. But it's not a straightforward lie. It's usually lying via omission or being vague. You hold on to your feelings. You hide your anger, you hide your fear, you hide your hurt. You hide what you really want and need. And so it isn't safe because you have an agenda that you're not being forthcoming with, and the other person can usually feel it. They may not know why they're not feeling totally relaxed and safe with you, but they know that they're feeling that. Neither do you feel safe and genuine and open and relaxed. So it creates distance when we're not being emotionally honest. They feel it and you know it on the inside because it ain't the truth. And until we deal in the truth, I don't think we can really connect, create bonds, create trust, feel close, to heal, to feel acceptance and love, to give acceptance and love, and to problem solve. There's too much anxiety. A lot of times there's hurt, resentment, and fear, and you know what I'm talking about, where if you had a moment in a relationship where you did not speak up, did not confront the issues, did not ask for what you needed, did not apologize and own your stuff, it is unresolved. It's the elephant in the room that no one is dealing with, but until it's resolved, it's going to be there and it's going to create problems. So why do we struggle so much with emotional honesty? Well, we've talked before in other episodes about growing up is where you learned how to be emotionally honest and open and direct or not, whether it was safe to do that, whether your parents modeled that and allowed you to do that as well. There can be very loving families out there that are very passive aggressive. So even though you don't think it was abusive in any way, emotionally and psychologically, it could have been in terms of it wasn't safe for people to say no and speak their mind and ask for what they needed and to be vulnerable and to talk about their process. So that you can grow up thinking you don't deserve to speak your mind. You're afraid to be open. You're afraid to be honest. There might have been blurred boundaries where you were afraid that you were going to hurt someone's feelings or ruin their day. Because somehow you got the message that you have that kind of power. You know today that you don't. None of us do. In those same families, there is an emphasis, whether stated or implied, that you have to win or be right. You have to have some kind of control over the other person in some way because everyone's afraid to be vulnerable. And there's a message of shaming if you're wrong or if it's not the way to look at something. Being an individual is not supported in families like that. So those are some of the reasons why we struggle to be emotionally honest. It's really putting ourselves out there. Now, what do I mean by being emotionally honest? Well, one aspect is being clear and being direct, which means not being vague. Vague keeps you from being a target. Vague keeps you the moving target that people can't pin down. If they can't pin you down, maybe they can't confront you, yell at you, be upset with you, shame you, talk you out of your truth. Some examples of vague phrases, that kind of thing, like stuff, that sort of thing, this type of thing, things like that and this, that and the other, instead of saying what it really is. The other way you can be vague is not make it about you, but use the word you instead. People do this all the time. They'll say things like, you know how when you want something, but you're afraid to ask for it? As opposed to, I want something and I'm afraid to ask for it. Do you see and feel the difference there? It's a huge difference. Using the you statement is putting it out there about other people. And it very well might be true. It might be a universal thing. It's not the point. The point is you're not putting yourself out there and making your truths about you. Another way we can do it and be vague is putting it on someone else. We've touched on that before here on the show. Like, don't you want to go out today? Hoping you can put it on them and they say, yeah, sure, let's go. As opposed to you risking saying, I'd really like to go out today. I'm feeling cooped up. Because what if they criticize you? What if they reject that? What if they don't agree? So the vague is trying to keep us from having to risk being vulnerable. And finally, asking for what you need. Saying no. Asking for help. Don't be passive aggressive. You don't appreciate all my hard work. That's putting your frustration on them because you didn't take care of yourself. Instead, you might want to say, I'd like to talk about getting a raise. Or, I need us to talk about splitting up the task. Can we do that now? So being direct, being clear, being honest, not being around the bush, not being vague, not giving double meanings to things, but just calling it, but keeping it about you. A lot of people start out being clear and direct with you statements. You can't do that anymore. You need to stop stepping on my foot kind of thing. And that's okay. But we don't want to stay there. We want to keep our truths about us and allow them to be wherever they are. Being specific is the next aspect of being clear and direct and emotionally honest. Saying things that matter to you, like I want, I need, I feel, I wish. It hurts when you. I feel safe and loved when you. it meant so much to me that you, or I worry that you think X about me. Do you get the vibe here of how much more vulnerable and specific that those statements are? I need you to clean up is too vague, can be too vague. Perhaps the other person knows exactly what you're talking about. But if you don't have the previous conversations where that's been spelled out, then you're taking a risk that they know what you're talking about. Now, especially for avoidant folks who struggle with boundaries, leaving it wide open, especially the deadline of when you want something done, is not a good idea. They're going to push the envelope as far as they can or kick the can. Instead, it's better to say something like, hey, I need you to clean up all the dishes and take the trash out by 2:00. Can you do that? So instead of keeping it wide open and vague, which again is our fear of pinning them down because then something could happen. So we say things like, oh, well, can you do it soon or someday, or it would be great if. No, take the risk and saying, hey, can we go this weekend? It means risking rejection and possible conflict because this weekend is asking for a commitment. It's a boundary ask. But remember, you usually only get really unhealthy responses from unhealthy people. And that's not yours to deal with. Healthy people hopefully wouldn't react, even if this weekend was important to them and you guys had to negotiate. Healthy people will negotiate like, hey, actually, I have something else I really got to do this weekend. Or remember, we have that thing. They don't get all pissed off because you asked. Now, there's context, right? I mean, what if there was an important event that you guys planned together the day before and then you came up and asked? Well, that'd be different. Take the risk. Say no, say yes, ask for what you need, ask them directly. Be specific. Don't be vague. Put it out there and see what happens. The worst thing that's going to happen is someone's going to have a crappy reaction. Well, then we know what we're dealing with. But not dealing is what makes us passive and passive-aggressive and vague and compliant and stuff our feelings. Because you will make them pay later, remember? You're stacking dynamite if you're not being direct and clear. And that brings us to our next aspect is make sure your insides match your outsides. No more hiding like we just talked about. No avoiding the conversations. No people pleasing, saying, yeah, sure, that sounds great. When on the inside you're screaming, hell no. If you ask for something, if you say yes to something, or if you say something bothers you, follow through on that. Make it real, or don't say it. If you say, yes, I can help you this weekend, then show up and show that you are totally happy to help out. And then they experience that when it comes time for you to follow through, they can trust that your word and your talk match for the most part in the best way that you can. So make sure what you really think, what you really feel, what you really need, what your boundaries are, what your values are, show on the outside of you more and more every day. This is a process if you have been one to be compliant over the years and you're now just getting in touch with what your real truth is. Take your time. The more you do it, the more you're going to want to do it. The more you do it, the more self-trust, like we've talked about, gets created. That increases your confidence. That in turn, this is a compounding thing in a really good way, will help you believe your own truth and be able to speak it so much easier. So this is a great thing to practice because the more you do it, the better you get. The more you do it, the more empowered you become. The more you do it, the more grounded and thoughtful and kind and compassionate you can be when you do it. You won't be as anxious and you may not come off as kind of snippy and frustrated as well. Another big aspect of emotional honesty is connecting with. So that means not talking at, but talking to. Think for a moment the times when you were on the receiving end of that and someone was just talking at you and it was all about them and there was no dialogue. When we sit down for a lecture or a concert, we expect that. We're going to be talked at. Most of those experiences, with the exception of some interactive workshops, are ones where we go to learn, where someone has knowledge or something creative to share. We don't have the expectation of participation. But in our relationships, we really want connection and dialogue. We want to be a part of. So I love this definition from bradhambrick.com. He says, first, a virtual monologue, quote unquote, is a conversation in which any dissent, alternative perspective, or even interruption is viewed as arguing or being on the other team. So they're talking at you with the very real sense that they're not interested in hearing what you have to say and they don't want to be challenged. Second, he says the word releasing should be understood in contrast with sharing a burden. I like how he differentiates that. He's like, when we're talking at, then the goal is not to invite the other person into your struggle, but to unload the struggle on the other person. So to yell at your partner when they come in the door because they left the kitchen a mess. In contrast, he says, talking to is the act of engaging with another person in a dialogue for the purpose of inviting them into your struggle and seeking their perspective, correction maybe, or encouragement to persevere in the difficult circumstance. So it's the way we're speaking. So some things you might want to check for in case you're guilty of doing this. Make sure you don't speak a sermon. Try not to lecture or fix. Like, did you even ask if they wanted to know? Don't go on and on about you. Stop for a moment and say, so where are you with this? Or make a vulnerable process comment. Say, I'm so sorry, I'm making this all about me today. Gosh, how did work go for you? Like sometimes we can do it very innocently. We're real excited about something, or we're really caught up and anxious about something and we can't help but go on and on about it. Another way we go on and on is we tell the story, the blow by blow, and then she said this, and then he did that. And sometimes that is necessary to explain something. But a lot of times what we're doing is we're hiding. They would much rather hear how you felt about what she said, how what happened at work impacted you, right? They don't want to hear so much about them. They want to connect with you. Again, this is another way we can hide. When we talk at people, we keep them at arm's length. They can't get in. We don't even punctuate our sentences long enough or stop speaking long enough for them to get in. It's anxiety. It's fear. It's not feeling safe. So the reasons why we do these things oftentimes are very innocent. Sometimes they are premeditated and manipulative. We have to check our own heart to see where we are. So the big one is being emotionally honest when we need to confront someone, deal with something. Now, ultimately, for any kind of heavy stuff or conflict stuff, we know that face-to-face is the way to go if we can do that. But that's the scary part, remember? The moment is scary for a lot of people for a lot of good reasons. First, just get honest with yourself about your fears of conflict, what your experiences with conflict have been, especially with this particular person. Maybe fear of being the bad guy and that awful guilt that you don't want. Fear of rejection. Maybe your own good enough will come up. Maybe growing up, your sister always teased you or ridiculed you when you tried to speak your mind or set a boundary or talk about a topic. What I want you to do is after you acknowledge the fear, I want you to focus on how shitty it can feel to be on the receiving end of not being addressed face to face. When someone dumped you in a text or hid behind an email or, God forbid, told someone else to tell you. That's the worst. They didn't face you and allow you to express your feelings or to negotiate or to defend yourself or to heal it with them. Now, I know it can feel really overwhelming if you have fear about doing things face to face, especially hard things. So start small with benign things that are appropriate to do a text message around, like, hey, sorry, we can't make it tonight. Or an email, hey, I really need us to talk about this upcoming situation. Like we say here all the time, practice, practice, practice with safe people. Practice speaking your truth, practice saying no, practice asking for what you need, practice sharing about you and about your life. Practice not doing fear. Keeping the big goal down the road of being brave and respectful, that face-to-face, having the courage to do that, because that's ultimately, of course, where you want to be. It's what we want people to bring to us, but we have to get real and say, how courageous am I and able am I to do that for them? What we do know is that when we can't show up in appropriate ways for important conversations, we lose out too. We don't get that opportunity for transformation. We don't get the opportunity to have a really powerful conversation with someone, even if it's negative. We're hiding or avoiding it, and we don't resolve anything that way. We don't resolve anything either when we're not being who we really are. So think about how you want to see yourself in the near future with others, and how you want them to see you. I imagine you want to feel and be authentic. You want to be real. You want to be honest. You want to be vulnerable. You want to have courage. You want to be proud of yourself, and you want to be a person who you see can have healthy relationships with others and yourself. I think deep down, most of us want these things. And don't be hard on yourself if this doesn't come easy for you yet. And I say the word yet because it is so possible to do. Is it going to take work? Yes. Is it going to take love and support and possibly therapy or coaching? Yep. Some of this work we can't do by ourselves. So find your safe people, tell on yourself if this is what you struggle with, and start practicing. Even if you just do that observing ego guy in the moment when you talk to people. Even before you're ready to change anything, I just want you to create awareness around how emotionally honest that exchange was, both on your end and their end. What did you do? Did you avoid? Were you vague or were you direct? Were you kind? Did you stand in your truth or not? Did you keep it about you? Did you tell them what was really going on? Or did you people please? Things like that. Just create awareness without shaming yourself. We can't change anything if we're stuck in shame. We can change stuff if we tell ourselves, you know what, I'm a good person. Okay, so I struggle with this passive-aggressive behavior. Well, my whole family does. They taught me a language that no longer works for me. I'm trying to learn a new one. So today we explored what it means to begin getting emotionally honest. It's about being brave by being assertive and why it helps to create trust and allows, I think, for more meaningful connection in our relationships. We compared and contrasted healthy connecting versus some passive-aggressive and avoidant ways to talk to someone. Okay, so there you have it. The profound significance of asserting our boundaries, communicating what we're willing and unwilling to do, and standing firmly in our truth. I think that through assertiveness, we can forge deeper connections and foster an environment conducive to open dialogue and change. The best way to connect with others is via emotional honesty, so we can build safety and trust and meaningful bonds. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you grab something that you can use this week and work on. If you don't already get the newsletter, make sure you sign up at ownitpowercast.com or hit me up on social and I'll get you one. And don't miss the Facebook Lives every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern. All you need to do is hit the link in the show notes to join the group, and you can jump right in. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you there. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.